Hello everyone, this is G and I'm back with another video, much earlier than I thought I would be. But I came across this article, or rather it was mentioned, it came up in my mentions on Twitter today, and I just wanted to sort of briefly give my opinion on a particular quote from Tom Taylor. For those who don't know Tom Taylor, he works for DC Comics. He is currently writing the Son of Kyle Superman comics, the one where Jon Kent is Superman, and that comic and Tom Taylor in particular are most noted for the fact that last year John came out as bisexual, really gay, in my personal opinion, because so long as Tom Taylor is writing this character, he will never have attraction to women again. But anyway, I don't want to focus on that. That's old news. That's last year. Although he does actually briefly mention it in this article, talking about how even he has to admit that it was rushed and that the reveal had been timed to come out on coming out day last year. So actually, it seems to me that he's just proved the point about pandering that myself and others were complaining about last year correct. But that's not what I'm here to focus on. That's not why I turned on the camera. I turned on the camera because of this particular quote, which I think, whatever my issues with Tom, he's blocked me online because I critiqued a piece of art. Not his writing, a piece of art. Very mild critique saying that the cover of one of the comics I felt just had no life, no energy, and he blocked me. So that's that. But I want to focus on this quote here because I think that it reveals, or at least it can be inferred that it reveals one of the issues Taylor and perhaps a lot of modern day, if not most modern day, comic book writers have, which is a distinct lack of understanding of heroism. And heroism is essential. It's an essential ingredient to superhero comics. Now I want to be clear, I haven't read his Superman, so I can't speak to what's in the stories. All I'm going by is this particular quote. That's all I'm evaluating, right? If you have more information, further information about the story or the character, excuse the noise, um, please let me know in the comments. I'm just solely evaluating this just in a vacuum, right? In and of itself. So this is an interview, and he's asked, Tom, I wanted to ask you about Superman, Son of Kal-El. There are so many big beat moments. I think you've done more than most writers do in 50 issues. But in hindsight, is there anything you might have changed or done differently? So he first talks about how he would have waited a bit longer for John and Jay to be together, but the importance of the moment outweighing the pacing issues, whatever. Right, but this is the part I want to focus on. We somehow managed to keep people engaged without actually having John punch anyone for 6 issues. I think that's really important as well. We have a young bi guy who's just the sweetest, most empathetic, nurturing guy that doesn't want to hurt anyone. And I think that's far more heroic than somebody punching a supervillain in the face. Right? And then you have because they're interviewing 2 writers, right? So that was Tom, and then this other writer pops in and saying, Dreamer is like, I'll punch somebody, right? Which, of course, Dreamer, for those who don't know, I think is a trans female character that DC is debuting, so it actually plays into the stereotype that exists today of the powerful woman just, solving everything with violence, right? So it's like okay, so the man doesn't have to fight, right? The man doesn't have to throw the punches, but the woman will do it, right? Which, of course, has been very irritating as a female reader, especially if the comic is written by Jason Aaron. My hand to God, I hope he never is assigned to write female characters known for their super strength and powers again. If he ever gets assigned to She-Hulk or Captain Marvel ever again, I might pull my hair out. But anyway, my griping is that I wanted to focus on this particular quote, right? So we have a young bi guy who's also just the sweetest, most empathetic, nurturing guy who doesn't want to hurt anyone. And I think that's far more heroic than somebody punching a supervillain in the face. Okay, here's my sort of contention with this. Being young, being of a certain age, young, old, somewhere in the middle, is not inherently heroic. Being bisexual or any orientation, including heterosexual, including asexual, right? Demisexual, whatever, pansexual, whatever it is not inherently heroic. Being of a sweet disposition, being empathetic and nurturing, while incredibly laudable, positive qualities that more of us need in the world, myself included, it is not inherently heroic. Being somebody who doesn't want to hurt others, again, very laudable. It's good to be peaceable, right? Even the scriptures say, as far as it depends upon you, be peaceable with all, with everyone, right? But being peaceable, right, or a pacifist, some may say, is not inherently heroic because none of those things are actions, right? Your age is not an action. Your sexuality is not an action, at least not in the sense I'm talking about, right? Being a sweet person, being empathetic and nurturing are not inherently actions. They are states of emotional being or personality. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying they're bad. None of these things inherently are bad. But, right, you cannot be a hero, you cannot claim to be a heroic individual if you do not take action. Now, does action always have to be something physical, violent? No, of course not. But a hero who does not take action is not a hero, right? As we've seen in real life recently with the tragedy in Texas and with the police not acting promptly and literally waiting for another team to come in and do the job that they were supposed to do. A lack of action is unheroic, right? It's like the saying about how, all it takes for evil to win is for a good man to do nothing, right? It's action. Not wanting to hurt people is a laudable goal. But what do you do if the only way to help someone is to hurt someone else? For example, somebody's being assaulted, right? You try to settle it without violence. Get off the person. Stop, stop. I'll call the police. Stop this. The person doesn't stop. What do? Right? How do you stop an individual who won't listen? For a person for where words don't work, right? You have to take action or bring in somebody who can, right? Which is, of course, the purpose of superheroes. They represent the side of us that wants to take action but can't, right? If a real person tries to break up a dangerous fight or attack a criminal, you're liable to get killed. Superman, whether it's Clark Kent, Jon Kent, or anyone else, it can be Connor Kent, whoever, can intervene just fine because a bullet isn't going to hurt him. You shoot him, he's just going to stand there grinning. It doesn't affect him, right? Heroes have to be people who take actions that help and save other individuals, right? Either prevents a tragedy, or if the tragedy cannot be prevented or it's already happened, then rescues them or rescues them from it, right, or from the getting worse, right, or or um, assist them in some fashion, right. Being of a certain disposition, of a certain positive disposition, is a wonderful thing, but it is not heroic. You think of something like the tale of the Good Samaritan, right? The Good Samaritan, the reason why he's called the Good Samaritan is because he saw someone in need and he took action. He did something. He gave practical assistance, right? Spending his money, putting the guy up in like an inn or something, right? He went out of his way to help somebody. And in that case, it's help somebody who actually would have sort of been his natural enemy, because the Samaritans and the Jews didn't exactly get along. One second. And when I say didn't get along, I mean like if the tale happened today, it would probably be called the Good Palestinian. That's how bad relations were at that point in time, to my understanding. But he went out of his way to help someone in need with no regard for where he came from or what he represented, right? Being a Jewish individual. That's heroism, right? Sacrificing yourself, whether it be your time, your money, your energy, in religious texts and in many superhero stories, in particular Superman, sacrificing your life. Now, you see, I can't ask Tom because Tom has me blocked, but I wonder, would Jon Kent, since he said he didn't want to hurt anybody, would Jon Kent do something like fight Darkseid? Would he fight Doomsday? Even if that fight ends up costing him his life, and his parents and his boyfriend and all of his friends end up mourning him, would he make that sacrifice? I don't know. I'd like to think he would, being the son of Clark Kent, having learned from Clark's example and the examples of other heroes like Batman and Wonder Woman that he would have grown up around. But I don't know, because apparently uh, uh, Tom Taylor thinks that having a certain disposition is inherently more heroic than punching a supervillain in the face, even though that supervillain is threatening other people's lives, threatening the whole of humanity. Or here's what I would ask Mr. Taylor, since I'm much more a Marvel girl than I am a DC aficionado. One of my favorite issues in comics, one of my favorite moments in comics, is the fight between Storm and Callisto. Right? And what I like about that is that Storm saves the day, but she does use violence to do it. Callisto stacks the deck in her own favor, and she basically makes Storm fight in a death match, in a knife fight to the death. Right? Storm can't use her powers, and even though it's not readily apparent in the art when the fight happens, which looking back, I'm like, you guys kind of fudged it there, but Storm was actually touched by a mutant named Plague earlier in the story. And if Plague touches you twice, you're dead. She's already touched Storm once, right? So Storm is like feeling like, imagine the illest, the sickest you've ever felt in your life and multiply that by 100, and that's how Storm feels in that fight. So she's feeling incredibly physically ill. She can't use her powers, or Callisto has threatened to kill all the X-Men she has more or less taken hostage, right? She's also challenging, although she doesn't realize it, she's also challenging Storm's morality, because Storm is at that point sort of the resident pacifist of the team. So now, Storm is in a moral battle. Will she actually attempt to kill Callisto? She's in a physical battle that she's unprepared for, right? And she can't use the one advantage she would normally have, which are her incredible weather control abilities. Callisto thinks she has this in the bag. What does Storm do? How does the fight end? Storm stabs Callisto in the heart. Was Storm wrong? Was Storm unheroic in that? Doing something morally questionable, perhaps morally objectionable, especially being the sort of resident pacifist of the team at that time, even though she rescued the teammates that Callisto had kidnapped and bound? Several X-Men. It was, what was it, Kitty? Because Kitty was sick and Caliban was looking after her. So you had Kitty, you had Angel, who was the one that Callisto actually kidnapped. Then you had Colossus and Nightcrawler. One second. So you had like four or five X-Men, not including Storm herself. Is Storm wrong? Is she unheroic? Or did she take action to save her team, to save the lives of her loved ones, in particular Kitty, right? Who she sort of saw like a daughter figure at that time. That's my issue here. You want to praise your character for being a sweethearted individual, and that's fine. But you're not demonstrating in this whether or not Jon would take action when needed. Now, to be fair, maybe it's demonstrated in the comics. It's entirely possible. But he is bragging here that Jon hasn't had to punch anybody, he hasn't had to be in a fight, which means he hasn't had to be in a physical conflict, or at least he hasn't had to be in a conflict that can't be resolved without talking it out for 6 issues. Now, I think that's a bad thing actually, because comics are supposed to be a fast-paced, visually dominant medium that's supposed to be action comics, right? Action-oriented, exciting, and physical conflict and combat is part of that, right? It's just visually exciting, right? But again, from this, I don't know if Jon would get the job done, if he would actually take action to help an individual, right? But so that's the first part, and now the second part. What is heroism? Heroism to me is action that involves some sort of sacrifice on your part or the part of the hero. It can be something physical, right? It can be something physical. It can be something violent, right? Killing somebody in self-defense or in defense of someone else for another. But it doesn't have to be punching somebody in the face. That he would reduce the element of conflict, of narrative conflict and physical conflict that's telling a story in the comics medium, and reduce it to just, hey, punching people in the face, man, is quite frankly to me quite insulting, and I wouldn't even call it a child's understanding of conflict in storytelling, because children can usually see at least somewhat past the superficial, right? But there are plenty of instances in comics, in DC Comics, where a character does not have to resort to violence, right, to be heroic or to do something heroic. For example, when Superman, who is dying himself, it's either All Star Superman or Superman Peace on Earth, one of them. And he talks the girl off the ledge, right? The sick goth girl. She's like about to jump because she thinks her doctor like forgot about her, and then Clark comes in behind her, and he's like, the doctor really was just late, and he comforts her, right? Or you can take something like, I'm kind of fudging here, I'll admit, but you could take something like when Batman sits with Ace in her final moments in Justice League, right? That demonstrated more than any fight Bruce has ever been in. That demonstrated Bruce's compassionate nature, right? Um, because he was willing to make himself emotionally vulnerable to comfort Ace in her dying moments, right? To hold her hand when she says that she's scared. In that moment, the big, bad, scary Batman was a little girl's best friend because he was there for her when nobody else was. While those are two examples of non-violent heroism, they are an example of heroism because they are actions. Bruce didn't have to go in there and comfort her. Clark doesn't have to go save that sick girl. But they do it because they are motivated in their own ways by love. They're willing to take action. And yes, Tom, as much as you may not like it, sometimes that action is punching a supervillain in the face. Sometimes it is getting into a brawl, right? Or throwing yourself in front of the bullet. Sometimes violence is the answer. Sometimes violence is the only solution. But Tom, with all due respect, if you're writing a character whose defining features are his sexuality, and he does not act like a hero. He doesn't do heroic things, and he's not. And his empathy and his sympathy and his sweet disposition do not motivate him toward heroic action, then you might be writing a superpowered young bisexual man falling in love for the first time, but you're not writing a superhero. But anyway, that's the video. Please tell me what you think, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good day night wherever you are. Bye.